When the game gets tough, the tough ones start to play at Armor Attack. Hi everyone and welcome back to Armor Attack Italy. This is Angelo and today's video is going to be about a topic which is quite important, and there is tons of discussions about this on Discord and everywhere. Okay, and this is how do the matchmaking system and the matchmaking ranking work, and how the different elements contribute to get at the end to the point where you get a nice balanced battle. It's going to be a bit tricky to explain it. I had to shoot some of the sections more than once because it seems easy to explain, but then at the end it's not really, because people the different elements that take part in this in the matchmaking can be balanced in different ways and stuff, and so it gets a bit tricky. So I'll try to do my best, and I hope that at the end the video is going to give you a good idea on how it works, possibly is going to make clear certain aspects that are not that clear, and possibly solve some of the doubts that you have about it. And if I will achieve that result, and I really do hope so, please leave a like, and why not subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. And now let's start with this tricky matter that I'm about to try to explain you. Okay, so the first part that I'm going to try to explain is the matchmaking ranking. Okay, there is one thing that you should know. I'm not giving you these elements and information just out of my fantasy. I had some conversation with some insider, and I did that because I wanted to get information that were as much exact possible. Of course, companies and games company are no exception. They don't like to give you full information about the MMR and the MMS, the matchmaking system, because afterwards the clients or the players could take advantage of that. So they told me as much as they could, and sometimes I had to read between the lines. But I'm going to try to do my best and give you the possibly a very good idea on how it works. There are a few surprises if you've been reading a bit what there is on this slide, and this video is going to be made on slide. There's going to be, of course, no gameplay. There are a few surprises. First of all, hunger strength that tons of people have invoked as involved in the ranking. Not, or at least it doesn't take part in the ranking in a direct way. And with that, I mean that, let's say you have a certain ranking of, and of course ranking is based on points, okay? And so you have a certain strength, a certain ranking, and you get drawn for battles with a certain kind of opponents. They are supposed to be as much similar to your ranking as possible. If at a certain point you do a bunch of upgrades, of course you're gonna have a much stronger hanger, but your ranking will still be the one you had. So indirectly, this will give you an advantage for a certain number of battles, and that as long as the ranking doesn't get updated. Okay, so it will be easier for you to win battles for a certain amount of time. Then once the ranking gets upgraded, you will go back to have not such an easy battles anymore. So it's an indirect participation, takes part in an indirect way. What is the one that are most important are leagues and division and wins and loses, and it's quite logical. Especially the league and division one is very important right after an update. Okay, because right after an update, when you log in the first time, there is a deeper analysis of your ranking. Let's put it this way. So it updates your ranking in a certain way, and in that moment, in that specific moment, leagues and division do play a big role. They do have a role normally, but especially in that moment, they do play a big role. Then, of course, wins and loses. Okay. Of course, they take part in the ranking. One thing that I was not sure about is that the battle score also take part in the ranking. And another thing is that about which I was so sure it would count, and I was surprised that instead it counts less than 0, is the MVP. MVP do count nothing for the ranking. One thing about which I wanted to take a little time is the hunger strength, because really a very big percentage of the players would like the ranking to be based on the hunger strength. Of course, it will still be dependent on the win and losses, the leagues and division, but the hunger strength will of course move up and down the ranking depending on what hunger you use, because you might have one hunger that is very strong and one that you haven't even unlocked all the characters yet, so it's much weaker. And so to have a chance to have a better balanced battle, to have the hunger strength as an important or very important element to decide the ranking. But there are some things to be taken in account, okay? And I'm gonna show you what I mean. So, to be able to have the hunger strength as an element that takes part in the ranking, what has to be done? You have to take, for example, the Hermit Hunger, take every character, every weapon, every modules, okay? Give to each of these things a value in points, since we are talking about ranking points, and of course these points will change depending on the upgrade. All right, if not, There won't be one, you know, it wouldn't mean anything to have something like this. So every character with its weapon and its module will achieve a certain number of points, and so the full hanger. That will result at the end to a certain amount of points that the server has to take in account for the matchmaking. Now, we know that your situation of your robot, your weapons, your modules are in the game progress. So to give a value to each of these elements, I would think that is not so complicated. It just takes a long time to decide the value for each thing, how much it values a level 2, how much it values a level 9, etc. So, but that could be possibly managed by the game itself. But then, when you go to battle, the server will have to use your matchmaking ranking, and your hanger strength is, that can vary, because I can play with this hanger, with this hanger, with this hanger, and they may have different values, so they have to be two distinctive numbers, because it's all made on points and numbers. So each player, when it goes for a battle, the server will have to take two numbers and translate it probably and sum them up, and that will make the final numbers for the matchmaking. But this means that the server initially will have to compute the double of the data that it normally does. And this is the part about which I'm not sure if something like this can actually be done. Or if you do that part, you decide that you want to base everything on the hanger strength, then you have to drop other data. If not, the mass of numbers that the server has to compute will probably translate that instead of waiting 60 seconds for a battle, you have to wait 2 minutes. So this I'm not sure about, but I thought to tell you what I think, because I think that would be nice to have that. I don't know how much is achievable, that's all. The next thing that is important at the end for the matchmaking are the ranking points. Okay, now what you see here was not given to me, is not information that was given to me by KEG or any of the devs in Armor Attack. This is something that I made up using a bit of logic. And it's easy to understand. I mean, in Diamond or whatever league you are, within any league there are a certain number of divisions. There are, those swords icons. When you are in Diamond, to complete Diamond you have 7, Platinum 6, Gold 5, and so on. So I wanted to translate that into points, and I gave 100 points to each icon. It was a very simple way to do it. I'm not saying that this is the way in which actually it is. It could be totally different. I mean, here instead of 2005, maybe in reality it's 100,000 points or 47 points, who knows. But it was logical a bit, and it would help me to make it easier for me to explain it and possibly for you to understand how things do work. So you go through leagues and division, and of course your ranking point will increase. Okay, and this is not such a difficult thing to neither to explain or understand. Now, before I start to talk a bit about the matchmaking, there is one thing that I need to tell you. It took me to shoot the different section of this video about 4 times before I finally found a sequence in which to show you things, try to explain them and put them in a way so that at the end the video would be as linear, clear and easy as possible. I hope I did a decent job. Don't be afraid to drop a comment. Just one favor, don't shoot me on sight, all right? Because I'm telling you, it took me quite some work to work all this thing, and I really do hope it will help. Anyway, let's go back to the matchmaking. And another thing, from now on in the video, and not because I'm crazy, but just there is no other way to explain it, we will have to jump back and forth between matchmaking and matchmaking ranking, and it's going to be a little tricky. So I will try to be very clear in everything. Okay, so matchmaking. Matchmaking, you all know, are used in basically any kind of business nowadays. But of course, we want to focus on the one for the game. Now, the first parameter, which is critical, and there is no way out from this. We can have whatever ideas, you can do this, you can do that. Why don't you apply this thing? Why? Numbers of players online. This is the key of the matchmaking to work well. The more the player, the better it works. It's just how the matchmaking system works. The bigger the number of the clients, the player, the whatever, the better it works. So, at the moment, we know that Armor Attack doesn't have 2 million players. So, the numbers are quite far from that. So, the matchmaking is trying to do whatever it can. Let's put it that way. Now, there are parameters that you can set in the matchmaking to try, as a result, to have a battle that is well balanced as much as possible. Okay? The parameters that will help or make it difficult for the system to do that are the time that you set the server to match the players. Because of course, if you give the server 20 seconds or 2 minutes to do that research to match the players, the result may be quite different. Okay? Even if in these parameters, this is the first one that gets a little tricky, because when you have just a few players, you need a longer time. And then we will see that this one, though, depends even on the ranking range. So these parameters, okay, given that the number of players is critical, but the other ones, it's you have to balance them to try to get the better result you possibly can. Now, the server time is one of these. The second one, but as you see I put discretionary, is the percentage of AIs in a battle. Okay? Why discretionary? Because, for example, depending on the number of players, you will have to raise or you can drop the percentage of this. But this percentage also depends on the time you give to the server, because if the server, you don't give the server enough time to to see every single player online and try to get the best one for a certain battle, what the server has to do is drop AIs. And then there is the ranking range, and even this one is very important, because depending on how wide this range is, of course battles can be more or less balanced. But even this parameter depends on the number of players. And as you see, we're getting into a part in which things do get tricky. If you remember, here you have the ranking. Here you have the values of the ranking. But here we have the ranking range, the one that the server uses during matchmaking to select the players. So now there are those numbers that I worked out. I don't know if they are correct or not, but it doesn't really matter now, because it was useful to be able to do this part. Okay, so this bar, I see 4, 8, 12, blah, 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 blah. Let's say this is the ranking, okay, where you have player in bronze, player in gold, player in diamond, and you tell the server that when he has to do the matchmaking, the ranking points range that it has to use is wide of a certain width. Okay, it can be of 400 points, 600 points, 800 points, 1000 points. Okay, and of course the bigger, the wider is this range, and the easier that the battles will not be that balanced. So of course what you would like to is to use a very, very small one, a very short range. But again, to go from this one to this one, the only things that matter is the number of the players. Without that, you don't have the opportunity to get this one smaller. Okay, there's just no way out. And then we get to the last part, which is this one, and here I'm gonna get you crazy. So this is sort of like a roundup of everything. So you see, this part is the part that we cannot change. I mean, the number of players is going to be always critical. And how the matchmaking performs can even change throughout the day, because throughout the day there will be times in which there are only a few players and other times in which it's crowded. And of course, how the matchmaking is going to perform is going to be quite different. Okay? Now, as I said, we all will love to be able that the server uses a very narrow ranking range. Okay? You get much better balanced battles. And if you have, but to do this, you need a lot of players. When you get that you can do this, most likely you're going to drop greatly. Probably you won't even see them around anymore, AIs. But again, to get to this, number of players. Okay? When you will have enough players to use this ranking range and even be able not to use AIs, in time, possibly not at the very beginning, but in time when the number of players increases even more, you will have the option to lower the weight for a battle. Okay, but this is a process that cannot be solved because the people of CAC and all the guys in the devs teams, they say, okay, now we want it to be like this. Now, if you don't have enough players, it's not going to work. Because let's say if now they say, okay, I tell you what, we use this range for the ranking. You know what that will be? That you playing alone with a bunch of AIs. If you use this one, you have very few AIs, but you have quite of a difference of strength between the players. But again, we always go back to the number of the players. And really, there's not really much we can do about it. Actually, no. There is one thing that we can do about it, and that will help CAC in then, of course, working on the algorithm for the matchmaking to get us the closest possible to this. If, guess what? If we promote the game with our friends and on the social and all that kind of stuff, because when the number goes up, this situation gets better. Okay, I really do hope that what I did try to explain and tell you was easy enough. I really did try very hard to make it as linear, as simple, and clear as possible. I don't know if I did hit the mark as I wished, but I really do hope that I did. And as usual, if you like the video, hit the like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. And as I say every time, ciao.